Hi, my name is Dr. Stephen Newhart, and this is the Dr. Fit podcast channel. On this channel, we believe that exercise is medicine. I spent 17 years of my life as a personal trainer prescribing exercise to people, and I found that it was a massive improvement strategy for disease. And on this channel, we're going to bring in a lot of experts. We're going to talk about science-based education and how it can be used to better your life or to even eliminate disease. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Fit podcast / television show. I have a great guest here today. We're going to talk about the effects of exercise on just basically life and what it can do to improve in that whole entire area. And then maybe we'll get a little specific and talk about how my guest periodizes and programs, and that's obviously going to be important for everybody to hear. So Amanda, I have Amanda Torres with me today. Amanda, thank you for joining me here. Yeah, thanks for joining us on the channel. I appreciate that. I love talking about exercise. I could probably talk about exercise all day long. Me too. And then, so this is going to be great that you love talking about exercise. It's actually kind of funny how we are sitting here right now. I reached out to a friend of yours, and she said this person would be great to interview on your Dr. Fit channel. So I love meeting you, and thanks for being here. So tell me, so how long have you been exercising? Let's just and should we stay specific to resistance training or?
I used to do quite a bit of cardio. I would say fitness in general, 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Maybe 4, but very, very consistently, then 3.
Okay. So you told me that you started exercising for a very specific reason.
I did.
What was that reason? What got you going?
So I was in a domestic violence relationship for about 7 years. And then when I first left, for like the first 6 months, obviously, if you've ever been in a domestic violence relationship, then you're probably aware, like, there's a lot of insecurities and stuff that follow with it. And for the first 6 months, I really didn't know how to channel some of those feelings. And initially I thought, well, I could just lose a little bit of weight. Maybe that would help with the insecurity. Mm-hmm. And then once I got really invested in it, I started to see the mental benefits that came with fitness and fitness in general, and specifically strength training.
Sure. So more so strength training.
Well, I used to run quite a bit. I actually did a half marathon like 2 years ago, my first half marathon. And after I finished that, I decided to stick with just strength training. I was like, I don't think.
Isn't it interesting? Because the extreme of cardio is 26 miles. Mm-hmm. The extreme of weightlifting is pulling 225 pounds off the floor, which lasts about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I think I'll choose the 10 seconds.
Well, and you know what's funny is it's almost the same accomplished feeling after running over 13 miles. That feeling crossing the line is almost equivalent to the 10 seconds that you're pulling 220 pounds.
That is massively interesting that you said that, because even as somebody that exercises, you don't always make all these connections that other people are making in there. And you're right, actually. What is that? I don't. Now I'm going to think about that all day long.
Yeah, I don't know. Once I realized that, I thought I don't need to run that much. It'd be a lot easier on my knees, I think, if I just stuck to strength training.
To get the same feeling.
Yeah.
Because 225, as you told me, your max is 225 pounds on a deadlift. To lift that kind of weight, that's not something that's easy to do. No. And it gives you the feeling that you could, in fact, go move something that other people couldn't move, that maybe could cause, a life-threatening situation or something like that. You know that you now have the power to go over there and save somebody. And you hear about these stories of people lifting
moms lifting cars and stuff.
Yeah. Which I believe is when you get all the endorphins and all the muscles and all the nerves involved in one lift like that, in one of those save situations, your body can do amazing things. Yeah. So now knowing that you can voluntarily move 225 pounds, you could probably do the same thing with a car easily. So that's great. It's just a great empowering feeling, I think. So other ladies like yourself, there's got to be more out there who have gone through these types of relationships. I shouldn't even say there've got to be more, because there are more. We know that. And if they knew that there was this outlet one of the purposes of this show is just to let people know that there is hope. I interviewed, my first interview on this channel was with a lady who reversed, osteoporosis, and exercise can actually do that. You've got how many millions of ladies with osteoporosis out there looking for a solution. Now we've got this understanding that if you're in a, type of negative type of relationship like you were, which I'm sorry to hear about that, then there's a solution.
Yes. Well, I always tell people that the way that I associated it with is when I was in that relationship, there were so many things that I was convinced I could not do. Whether it's find another job, live on my own, be financially stable, run a household alone. Once I started doing things that physically required me to step outside of my comfort zone, that mentality translated into everything that I did.
Right.
So I started thinking, I went back to school in October for my bachelor's in sociology.
Sure.
And I got my certification right before that for training. And all of it was because at some point I had chose to tell myself that if I could get out of this relationship, and then if I could live 200, little things, if I could bench this or lift this, then I could do more. And then I started doing more. And I was shocked at what I was capable of. People ask me all the time, because I have 3 kids and work full time. I go to school full time. I train others, and I'm on a nonprofit board. And people always ask me, how do you manage to do all of that? And I said, you'd be surprised what you're capable of when you don't give yourself the option.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you on that. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was getting a PhD. I had a child. We were moving into a new home. I had just bought this business from the previous owner, and people were doing the same thing to me. How are you making all this happen? And so I won't leave you with this, but I'll tell you this. This is what somebody told me just the other day, that resistance training on weights is training for life resistance. So almost resistance training is resistance training. When you start being able to do more, it's because resistance was placed in front of you. You can either push that down, or you can use it as a barrier, and you can let it push you back. So resistance training with weights is a way to push through. You get the feeling as if you can push through everything else that encounters you in life that is supposed to be a roadblock, but you don't allow it to be. So I believe you, and I'm with you, and you've noticed all these life changes.
Training muscles, right? You're training your mind too.
You're a personal trainer. So you're a personal trainer.
Yes.
Who are you certified through?
ACE.
That is one of the best ones you can get.
That's what I've been told. And, I was studying for it, and I almost for a second thought to myself, I probably should have picked an easier certification. But ACE seemed like the right way to go.
Now you have one of the top certifications, so good for you. Our here, who is now our CFO, she has been working with me for 10 years. I hired her 10 or 9 years ago, and we've worked together ever since. And she has ACE. That was her first certification that she could get. And she was the busiest trainer. Then she moved into the fitness director role. Now she's the CFO of our company. And so I look very highly to ACE. ACE is a good one. So where do you train?
What do I train?
No, where do you train?
Well,
or do you go to people's homes?
No, I do online training right now.
Okay.
Only because I went back to school and one-on-one training, and then COVID, and of course everything. One-on-one training was just a little bit more time consuming. Sure. Online training, I'm able to load up the plans, upload the videos, and then the clients can send me videos back to check form. Sure. We can work on really essentially anything that you can do in person online. It is,
it's a big thing now.
And then it allows people to work out on whatever schedule works best for them.
Sure. At some point, we need to get you in the gym and start giving you some real people.
I know you have a nice gym here.
Giving you some people to actually correct, because with that high-level certification, I don't know if you're doing it justice.
Even prior to getting my certification, I trained close friends and family. So I did get some one-on-one, like in-person
good
clients.
I am still a big fan of it. I think that the full product that a trainer has to deliver is done in person because of the energy shared.
I'll tell you what, I'll leave accounting, okay, and then I'll just come work over here for you guys.
As long as you like the facility. I mean, you've got a great certification, you've got experience, so that's typically what we look for. And we usually have interns coming through regularly from UTA, of course. But let's talk a little bit more specifically about lifting, because deadlifting is your favorite exercise.
Yes.
And so what are some key points that you would tell somebody? Because people that listen to this channel, they're going to want advice on exercising. Mm-hmm. So tell me what would be some key pieces you'd give somebody on a deadlift?
I always start with one of the mistakes that I made when I started deadlifting. Mm-hmm. is initially I didn't fully understand progressive overload.
Yeah.
I always associated with just adding weight.
Right.
Because that's what I always saw, that's what I always heard. But I didn't understand that progressive overload also comes in the form of technique, things like, your form, things like that. And then I had someone correct me that's been doing fitness for so long. Once he saw some of my videos, we went over it, and I realized I really had to take a step back on the weight.
Right.
And correct the form.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't right. Mm-hmm. And it was it humbles you, that's for sure. But I had to work my way all the way back up to 225 when I was so close, but doing it so wrong.
And that's what happens. And that's what we don't want to happen to people is you get that close. It could be that next day.
Yes, that you hurt yourself.
Weight finally, it's like it's heavy enough that one of your back muscles decides to snap or one of your discs decides to bulge or whatever. Because that exercise, it's big for that. I mean, that's where a lot of that stuff happens. It's not even as prevalent in back squatting as it is in deadlifting. So, I'm totally with you. And it's just the cues I like to give people. I mean, you've got to have, your back's got to be flat.
Yeah.
And then if it's not flat and you're not bracing with your transverse abdominis and your erector spinae on the backside of your body, it's just, so even a little bit of that rounding, I don't know if people understand when the back starts to round like this, if there's all this load here, you're just waiting for one of your discs to pop out. Oh, yeah. And once they pop out, it's really hard to get it to go back in. So you got to have that flat back, get down there. But I teach classes for UTA, and one of my students the other day said ego lifting. And I think that word's probably going to start getting out there. And I actually, when they said it, I liked it because I've been saying that forever. In my world, we just say, I don't use any trendy terms. Like, pay attention to yourself. Don't pay attention to other people. That is the exact, definition of that word. Is don't lift based on what other people are doing. Lift on what you can do, and pay attention to your weight and your form.
And one thing I had to learn too was, it is because you always see it on social media. You have to lift heavy. You have to lift heavy, and that's not really always the case. I mean, you can still get a lot of muscle activation from lighter weights in slower tempos,
totally.
Things like that. And then I was actually just talking about my Instagram the other day about weightlifting belts. Some people are using them all the time, yet they don't know how to really, really utilize their internal core, the transverse abdominis, things like that. And they're just relying on a belt. And now, when the heavier they get, I mean, they really can't because they haven't learned to utilize any of their internal core muscles.
We had a really good strength coach when I played football, and he would give us belts only for max lifts. So we would use them for like 2 reps, and then you take it off and use it for the next 2 reps. But all throughout the preparatory season, you weren't using that. And I do tell people, if you're using it all the time, those muscles are not going to be as strong. Okay, so you're not allowing them to develop with that because you're essentially your guts are pushing out into the belt and it's creating the stability that you need.
Right.
Instead of you doing it yourself. So when you progress up from so I like to talk about a bent row because a bent row is a very interesting exercise. The goal of the exercise is to strengthen your rhomboids on your back, but you have to be in a position where the second you put yourself in this position, the weakness of your lower back starts to show because you're like, I can't hold this that long or this or that. That's one of those exercises where regardless if your rhomboids are strong enough, you have to take the weight down to allow your back to get stronger before your upper back can actually be challenged. And it's so important to go through that. You don't want to skip that because that's where you go up or you start seeing the people that are really, really they're because your body lean of your torso should be
Right.
almost even with the ground. They're up here, and they're kind of like even shrugging it up into their shoulders. You're not challenging the right muscle group at all.
Right.
With that,
I'm a big fan of Pinlay rows.
Tell me
I do
about that.
bent rows.
Well, you have to educate me.
I used to do bent rows, and then I kind of switched over to Pinlay rows because, well, one, it's a little bit easier. It felt a little bit easier on my back, but I noticed that on Pinlay rows, I couldn't keep a flat. I couldn't bend down. I'm sorry, on bent rows, I wasn't bending down enough, and
Right.
Pinlay rows force you to because the bar's on the ground.
What is that? Tell me what
Pinlay row?
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. So the bar's on the ground. You're bent over, just like a bent over row, but the bar always makes contact with the ground.
Oh, I see.
And then you're just pulling it up to your chest, just
And
like
then
you
set
would
it
a
back
bent
down.
row, and then you set it back
Okay.
down. Yeah.
Okay. Good deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of those because anytime I go up weight and I'm not ready for it, I almost immediately feel it in my lower back, and then I know to adjust it.
We have gotten to the point where so many of the exercises that we tell people to do, because we've shifted to almost all compound. You know, it's like machines are out. I'm not a huge fan of the machines are out comment, but we've shifted to a lot of compound. A lot of compound exercises are going to go right through your midsection, and a lot of that's going right through your low back. And if you're doing it day after day after day after day, I expect that your low back's going to start.
Yeah, any compound exercise is going to really force you to utilize.
It is. It's just going to happen.
Your core muscles. Yeah.
So, but anyways, but I mean, you know, I love talking to you about this, and thanks for coming on the show. So
I love fitness, so any opportunity I get to talk. I don't have a lot of friends that are as fitness enthusiasts as I am, so sometimes I'm like, don't y'all want to talk about the gym? They're like, not really. I'm like, oh.
Give two key points to the people that are listening out there. Just, I don't know, whatever comes to mind. 2 tips.
2 tips. Don't worry about anybody else's progress. Only worry about yours.
Correct.
Everybody's muscle builds differently, right? And then focus on form.
There you
Form
go.
is so important.
So in the psychology world, we call that kind of goal that you're like, so if I'm like, I want to be like Amanda, that's called an outcome goal. And an outcome goal is never what we should focus on in the gym because
I always tell that.
Social comparison.
Don't want to look like me. Want to look like the better version of you.
How interesting
the best
is this?
version of you.
Let me ask you this question. How interesting is this? We've known for 40 years probably that an outcome goal is bad. Yet, what did we do? Well, let's create all this social media platform where everybody's trying to be like everybody else. So let's go the complete opposite direction. It's almost as if we did not learn from what we knew, and then we developed this. Now your system's different. You've got everybody in their own little. You're the coach, and they're in their own individual slots. They're watching you, and you're watching them. That makes sense. But when we just blanketly stare at everybody that's out there and say, "Oh, that's what I want. That's what I want," it gets so confusing.
It does.
You have got to focus on yourself, just like you just said. That's one of the probably we need to actually emphasize that point and take that point into the next century because it's what we need to start focusing on.
Yeah. I always try to be very transparent and tell people just because you see that this works for me doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. My muscle may build better in one area. I've never really had an issue with building my upper body because I don't carry a lot of fat in that area. So I tend to look a little bit leaner in the upper body when I'm trying to.
Yeah, sure.
But for somebody else, that might not be the case. You know, body fat composition is very different for everybody else, and muscle growth is very different for everybody.
It is.
So it's really more important about figuring out what works best for you and really capitalizing on that.
I think that's the moral of this this talk right now is focus on you, and thank you for all the input and everything on your background. That's very amazing, and I hope we inspire some people with your talk today. I guarantee that we will. Actually, I shouldn't say I hope we will. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you everybody for tuning into the Dr. Fit channel, and we'll see you again next time.